What the hell was that? GP's bottom 5 games of all time. Today on. Think that'll be okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, cool. So you starting, or do I start us off?
Well, because you're serious, so I know it's kind of weird, but you're hosting it, but then I will, you know, tell you why you're wrong. How about that?
Okay, cool. I like that. Okay, here we go. Everybody, hello and welcome back to Press B to Cancel. My name is Guy Prime, and today I am joined by my good friend Sick Jake.
Hey, everybody. I had a great time doing my bottom 5 list. I'm really looking forward to hearing yours.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so today's episode is just about my 5, what I would consider the worst games, or I guess my least favorite games of all time. And I'm glad you're here doing this with me, but really, I just need you to give me a number, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then just listen to me rant for the next 3.5 hours about all the fucking time of my life that I've wasted on these 5 games.
I always love when there's low effort expected of my part.
And, I feel like that sentiment translated to the development teams of the next 5 games that we're about to talk about.
You're throwing shade and you haven't even said what they are yet.
Oh, okay. Let me start off by saying, typically I like to prepare for these recordings by doing at least a little bit of research, some preparedness, that kind of stuff. Today, because it's an opinion piece, I found that I still had to make some notes because my top 5 list is comprised of games that are incredibly forgettable. And I think that is kind of the through line. I kept forgetting what my bottom 5 list is because I'm like, and honest to God, the listing here of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is incredibly arbitrary. You could throw these against the wall like spaghetti in whatever, order they stick in. That there we go.
So for your list, there's just nothing redeeming about any of these?
For the most part, I did steal a little bit of your energy from last, I guess that was, well, by the time this airs, probably 4 months ago.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't ruin the illusion.
I don't know that each one of these games is going to be a game that everybody listening will be like, yeah, that was a horrible, horrible experience. But I have my reasons, and I've got one honorable mention that is a bit of a hot take, and I'm not sure if it should be on the list or not. So we're going to want to talk about that as well. So.
Okay. So you want to start with your honorable mention, or you want to start with 5?
No, I'm going to give some suspense leading up to the honorable mention. So we'll do that between 1 and 2.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Well, hit us with number 5.
Okay, so this is where I'm taking notes from you. I don't actually feel like this is... I don't hate this game, but I know a lot of people do. That's not why it's on the list. But the idea for me picking this one is it is so bad because of how great everything else in the series is. So I'm talking, of course, about Final Fantasy II. Now, don't get it twisted. I mean the original, actual Final Fantasy II, not the Final Fantasy IV that we originally knew as Final Fantasy II. This is Final Fantasy II for the NES.
The NES one. Okay. So I have not played this one, but I thought you liked this one. Or was that 3 that you liked?
No, 3, I was pleasantly surprised. So last year, the back end of 2020, I had done a marathon of all the Final Fantasies from 1 through 7. Because there were some of the older ones I'd never played. I'd never played all the way through Final Fantasy 1.
Right.
Though I had seen it, beaten. 2 and 3 I'd never played. Obviously, you guys know I've abused 4. And then 5 I had never played all the way through. And then 6 and 7 everybody loves. So got through 1 and I loved it. I was dreading going into 2 because I didn't really know much about it outside of the fact that people really seem to hate it. And I came away thinking, okay, I understand why they hate it. It is an absolute chore of a game. I did have a player's guide with me, which typically I try not to do whenever I'm doing first playthroughs or blind playthroughs.
Right.
But because of how loathed this game is, I felt justified in just wanting to have the answers there so I could get through it.
Okay. Because the first game is, I mean, it's not certainly the best of the series, but the first game kind of had a decent gameplay to it. It was a good game. You would think the sequel would be okay, if they made 20 more of these down the road. What makes it so bad?
This is the anti-Mega Man. So do you remember when I was telling you about my top 5 list and I was explaining my theories on Mega Man, like 1 through 6, how 4 was the pinnacle?
Right.
But 2 is so loved because it took what was great about 1, expanded on it, and then started the series in a good direction. 2 did the opposite. It took some of the things from the first one and then shit on them, or completely just recalibrated them. For example, the first thing that comes to mind, the leveling system. One of the things that's absolutely a staple and a benchmark now for Final Fantasy are levels. What I'm a level 42 paladin, with whatever,
XP points.
Yeah, experience point, all that kind of stuff. That stuff is out the window. You can make your characters whoever you want. Now, the characters I like. The story is good. I like the characters. But outside of that, the game is not great. You have to purchase the magic, which is what they did in the first one. But then you level up the magic. If you want a fighter to be a strong fighter, you just attack nonstop. And the attack is what grows or levels up. If you buy a spell, you want that spell to be stronger. You only use that spell until it gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
I see. So it's based on the items. Yeah, that's the Ultima system, I guess, where the more you do something, the better you are at it.
Which I love the idea of it, but the execution of it in Final Fantasy II was very lackluster. Now, as I mentioned, I had a player's guide in front of me, and I had done a little bit of research, hoping to just breeze through Final Fantasy II as quickly as I could. And there's some spoilers here for strats. If anybody's not familiar with this game, skip ahead a few minutes, or whatever. But essentially, at the beginning of the game, you can buy, I think it's Toad or Frog or whatever the spell is. You're going to want to level that up to level 16 right away, which is going to take about 12 hours.
Okay. Why?
But if you have because there's how do I say it? There's some very high-powered things that you can do once you can turn bad guys into frogs. And if you want to turn somebody into a frog, it needs to be leveled up as high as it can, if I'm remembering this right. Because then they've got their Peninsula of Power, which is kind of the nickname for an early section of the map that you're not supposed to be able to know about, or but you can access later game bad guys in a very small section of the map early on. But so if you do that, turn everybody into a toad and kill them, it makes it very easy to quote unquote level up very quickly.
So even if they're a toad, you still get the full experience from that monster.
Yeah, if I'm remembering that right, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Now again, I've only played it once, and it was a year ago, and I've gone through some therapy to try to expunge this from my mind. And then there's a couple other secrets in there. There's like a slide puzzle game, or it's not. Slide puzzle was in the first one. This is a memory game where there's 16 tiles. You flip one over, there's a picture, so then you have to find the corresponding one.
Right.
So this is a bit of a cheat, but it's in the game, so it's allowable, I suppose. There's 16, or maybe there's 32 possible, I don't say maps, but versions of this game, right? So you play the first one, and if you know the order, and you do it in under a certain time without making any mistakes, you get basically end-game weapons and armor.
What?
Okay? Right.
Let's see, the minigame in the first game, you got nothing from that sliding puzzle. Nothing.
Right. Well, in the updates to that game, in the PlayStation version, if you keep getting new best times or new PBs on that, you get items and GP or gil or whatever.
Oh, well, damn. Okay.
Right. So with this one, there's that memory game. If you do it perfectly, and I think it's under a certain time, you get the Masamune and all this other high end equipment. So then you start a new game and exit it right away 31 more times, so it recycles and takes you back to the first thing. So you do that 4 times, and you've got end-level stuff for all your characters. So I cheesed that game as best as I could, and I think it made it more tolerable that I gave myself that edge. I am certainly one who likes to grind early on, so that was fine, but still 14 hours just to get that Toad mastered was...
Okay, but
that was rough.
Do you have to do that grinding? Can you still have fun playing through it the normal way?
Well, I want to say yes, but I haven't done that, so I can't give you a definitive answer. All I know is people hate this game for the way that those systems work. Now there are some fun things to it. They've got towns that are callbacks in later versions of Final Fantasy, like Mysidia, and Mysidia being a town run by very strong magic users, which you see again in Final Fantasy IV. So there's a lot of lore building in Final Fantasy II, and in that way, it's like the Mega Man 2, where they added some cool new stuff. But the anti-Mega Man comes from not. I mean, it was a ballsy move. People loved the first Final Fantasy, and to come out with the second one and say, we took everything that you loved and changed it, and not for the better, was a tough thing. And then they course corrected on Final Fantasy III, and the rest is history.
Right.
But again, if you've never played 2, I do recommend doing it, but maybe emulate it if that's legal. And just fast forward through the front parts. I do recommend heavy grinding on the front part to make the back end easier, because honestly, to me, the worst thing about this game was every time you have a new quest or a new thing you have to do, you've got to walk clear across the fucking map to get to the opposite side of the world to talk to somebody who will then say, oh, you've got to go back to the main kingdom and talk to the queen.
Okay.
And this queen person is constantly sending you on chores or errands that are really just, talk to this person in this town, and then you just turn around and go back. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah, nobody likes fetch quests, and the way you describe the leveling up system, the do something better and you get better at that one thing type of system. Skyrim, Morrowind does that too, and it's not my favorite way of playing an RPG at all. On paper, it sounds neat, because then, if your fighter's going to be better as a fighter, you just keep doing what you're going to do anyway. You get better at it, but then you kind of feel pigeonholed and doing the same thing. There's a few games that kind of have that problem, and it's a trap I don't like. But it's a shame. Like, the first game is a solid RPG, and I heard nothing but praise about the third game, and we all love 4 and 5 and 6, but to hear that 2 was kind of a nosedive is interesting.
Well, and my retrospective after I'd finished that marathon of 1 through 7 was that the biggest hindrance to Final Fantasy 2 are the words Final Fantasy. If it had been a one-off non-Final Fantasy game, I think people would remember it more fondly. But to see what it's surrounded by and what the franchise later became, I think the biggest thing against it is just that it's part of the Final Fantasy world.
No, fair enough.
But I mean that's kind of my takeaway from 2. It's not the worst game of all time, but considering, like I said, that it's part of the Final Fantasy, so many people hate it. I felt I would be doing it a disservice to not mention it, so I put it at 5.
See, I think I'd want to play it, but there's no way in hell I'm going to grind for a dozen hours for a single spell. That kind of thing feels like,
Right.
The boxer who hates boxing because he spent years training, and that's all he could think about and do for years on end, right? So he has no more joy actually boxing, right? So I think maybe that must be the problem, right? Like, it's nice that there's hidden stuff you can grab early to give you an advantage, but if the advantage means a dozen hours hating yourself, even with fast forward on an emulator, I don't think I'd do that.
Yeah, it's rough, and with the NES graphics, it's not a very fun experience. I had the benefit of now I do own it, so I don't mind saying how I played it, but I was able to play it with the updated graphics, and that helped. I think that's the only way I could do it, is if I could kind of edge the bet a little bit, if that makes sense, or hedge,
fair enough.
Whatever the word is. So so that's 5.
The number 5 is Final Fantasy II, the bad one on the NES. Okay. All right, number 4.
So, along the same lines of really fucking cool idea, but embarrassingly bad execution, is Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero.
See, I've never played that, but I always thought if I did that I would love it, because I freaking love Sub-Zero.
I know. What a cool character. Throughout the games, throughout the movies, I've always just, that's my go-to guy. Like, that was my Halloween costume as a kid. Sub-Zero is dope, and I love the fighting games.
Right.
And I believe that MK Mythologies was going to be a series where they would bring in these kind of one-off games to expand the lore of a lot of different characters. The way that X-Men was going to do like X-Men Origins for Wolverine and then like Magneto and a bunch of things.
Right.
But then the first one flopped so bad that they decided, no, we're scrubbing that.
There is a second one of these, though, I think. It's a Mortal Kombat Shaolin Knights or something. It's with Kung Lao and Liu Kang.
Right. But I think because of the bad taste that mythologies left in people's mouths,
Right.
they did away with the word mythologies. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's accurate.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Because then they also had like MK Special Forces, which was like Jax, I think.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that one.
Well, and I think that game is widely regarded as one of the shittiest games of all time as well.
Wow, okay. But these are like the beat-em-ups, spin-offs of MK, right?
Right. So the idea with MK Mythologies Sub-Zero is one of the most beloved characters from the franchise taken out of the fighting game and put into a platformer. Really dope sounding idea. I could understand everybody's hype level being elevated during whatever board meeting that happened at.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the product that we got was an unpolished turd that you understand that you're looking at it, and that's Sub-Zero. But the clunkiness of the physics engines, the graphics were not on par. Again, this is a very forgettable game, except for, I'm thinking of that scene from Star Wars Episode 3. You were the chosen one. You know what I mean? And then Anakin is on fire, losing his limbs and going, I hate you. And that is this game. It's us as fanboys for Mortal Kombat saying, you were the chosen one. And this shitty ass game just saying, I hate you.
Was this on this is N64 or PlayStation?
I believe both.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Really, we're the chosen one with the N64.
Well,
could have brought us a mature game. We're sick of Banjo. You destroyed it. Anyway.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, that was not a great era for Mortal Kombat video games. If you look at Mortal Kombat 4, a lot of people hated that. I understand why. I was not mature enough of a gamer to be able to look at Mortal Kombat 4 and be like, oh, this sucks. I was like, hey, it's a 3D Mortal Kombat. This is wonderful. Who's that guy? Oh, he's the new Kano? Fine. I don't care. But MK Mythologies Sub-Zero is a shitty game on its own, but the reason it made my top 5 is because of the hope, what this game could have been still seems like a good idea. That's how much I love the character and Mortal Kombat. But what we got was it's not good.
Okay, I need to know a little bit more about why it's bad, though. Like you said, bad physics. I know it's like it's not rip freight from the fighting game, is it?
No. It almost feels because I've got to go back into the times that I rented this. Nobody I knew owned this one. This is a rental from Hastings, in the 90s. And what am I thinking of? Sands of Time, not Prince of Persia, but like kind of that meets the over animated walking motions and turning motions from Moon Crystal, which I know you've seen me play.
Right.
Or like Pitfall or whatever that is.
So not
like that
really
kind
tight
of
controls, right? Like,
no, not at all. And you can jump at something and you know you're going to be able to grab onto it. But then sure shit, you don't grab onto it and you just fall forever.
Right.
And there's a lot of, okay, I got to climb, and then you get to the top and then you fall again. If this game accomplished anything, it would be kind of better informing the player about the Elder Gods, Fujin and some of those other guys that are akin to Raiden. But
well, and that's why I wanted to like this one, because Mortal Kombat lore is just a thing, right? Like they take it just serious enough, even though it's batshit nuts. But these games were meant to explore the backstory of the MK universe and kind of go with it. And we don't really get that very much until, well, recently we have with the new ones. But back then, there wasn't a time for story, right? Fighting games were all about the combat, nothing else. So I was kind of hoping this would be okay. There's characters, I think, that were mythologies that later came to MK, I think, as in the fighting game, if I'm not wrong. But that's disappointing. So, like, the story sucks, even? Like, there's just nothing redeeming in this pile of shit at all.
Okay, so that's where I have to admit I didn't do the research on that. For this one, am simply going off of what I remember and what I've seen from other people, because this is one of those titles, because it's Mortal Kombat, that when like the new movie just came out earlier this year, I watched so many videos on trivia from like backstories of all these different characters because I had that fever again for Mortal Kombat.
Right.
But nothing I could watch on Mythologies, even stuff that is supposed to be entertainment for YouTube from, non-Mortal Kombat related people just doing reviews, none of it could hold my attention. So even hearing other people talk about it was boring.
Okay.
That's why I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I'm sure right now everybody's like, what else is on the radio?
All right. Okay.
But yeah, no, it's okay. I'm a mostly stupid adult. So believe me when I say I was a very stupid child. And I would have rather read the novelization of what this game should have been instead of played the video game.
Sub-Zero Mythology is the official novel edition. Yeah.
Even the player's guide would have been a boring read. Sorry, I just thought of that. Stupid.
Oh boy! All
but
right.
yeah, if they'd written a novel out, I would have been like, I could barely read, but I would still rather read than.
Well,
than
when kids turn to the
Mortal Kombat.
book instead of playing the game, you know it's a winner. All right.
That's when you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So number 4 is Mortal Kombat Mythology's Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is like out there somewhere, there's probably somebody who's like, this is the greatest game of all time, Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. And just know that I am so sorry that is your experience. Play something else.
Well, I always try and say I was careful not to dump on. I'm trying not to dump on games as much these days because every game out there is potentially somebody's favorite game, even if they're
Right.
wrong. So maybe there is somebody who likes Sub-Zero Mythologies. Who am I to judge? But I'm kind of sad here.
If you're out there listening and you non-ironically legit love Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, reach out to me and maybe we can have you on the Okay But Hear Me Out episode.
Hey, that'd be a good idea.
If somebody can redeem this game and make me curious about it, I'm all for hearing it. But that's what's so great about these episodes that are dedicated shitting on things is we can lightheartedly defend it. I mean, I'm never going to be like, this game sucks, no reason, done. If you like it, you suck.
Right.
No. Yeah. So it's I'm not wrong, but it's also an opinion.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
All right. Well, hit us with your number 3.
Okay, now before I do, I will say this. I could have made an entire bottom 5 list just of fighting games.
There's a lot of bad fighting games, like a ton.
Right. So the next 2 I'm going to mention are both fighting games, but they're on opposite ends of the spectrum for what they were trying to accomplish. So the number 3, and really this could be number 2, and number 2 could be number 3 here. But number 3 is Balls 3D. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, you ain't wrong. It's a terrible game. I rented it a couple times. So.
Oh my god, it is it looks like Dippin' Dots sponsored it, and they're fighting, and again, it's hard to kind of understand. Like if you're looking at your character, which is just made out of various sized balls, it's kind of hard to see where their boundaries are as a character, especially when you're in the scrum with another character that is also made up of balls. They tried to switch the color palettes or differentiate, whatever between the characters with different colors and different sized balls, but it sucks. And I mean, this game is shit. How do I say this? This is how big of a piece this is. I'd never played it or seen it until about a month ago. Here's the story. K-Biz, whom you all know and love from the Retro Therapy.
Of course, the Phase of Retro.
Right, of course. He had recently bought a little, mini Super Nintendo or whatever that has every single video game ever for the Super Nintendo and the regular Nintendo loaded onto it, okay? And so he and I, my cousin Trev One, who you all also might know from the Retro Therapy, and my brother and Trev One's brother, we all got together and we were playing these games trying to remember which ones we love. And then we got to the fighting category and we just wanted to go through all the classics, the Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. We went to Killer Instinct, which is great. Then we get into some of the known stinkers, such as Primal Rage, Pit Fighter, which I get sucks, but I love Pit Fighter for some stupid reason. And then we get to the bad unknowns, which, I could make a list of probably 20 of these that are just horrible. But Balls 3D is the one that stuck out to me. And not only was it it wasn't bad enough that it was a waste of time for the 20 minutes we played it. I don't mind. That was when we said bottom 5, I'm like, this has to go on there. And I just found out about it. So that's how strongly I feel about how bad this game is.
Do you remember how many characters are in it?
I think 6.
That's really that
One
low.
of them's like a clown. One of them, like they say have different attributes, but they really don't. Like, I think most of the work put into this game was made for the background. They tried to go, for a 3D look. It's in the name, Balls 3D.
Right.
Which, by the way, the one we played obviously was for the Super Nintendo. I think they did put this over on, like the Neo Geo or maybe even the Dreamcast. I'm not sure what year this came out or where all they tried to put it on, but we did it for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So you're in like this stadium and you can see the background, and it's, you're in like a Coliseum circle which will move as you move. And I feel like they were very proud of themselves because they said, look what we found out how to do. There's billboards, electronic billboards in the back that say different things that are funny or kind of, cheeky or on the nose.
Right.
And then I think they programmed all that, and they're like, oh shit, what are we going to do with the characters? I think that, the characters were the last ones they thought about building. And they said, well, let's just use... I mean, it could have been wireframe characters with no actual body design, and it would have been better looking.
Yeah, it's like the Mode 7 thing, right? It's like people got around a developer table. They're trying to spitball ideas, right? All the good ones are taken, and they're like, well, Mode 7, that's neat. Sure, let's build a game around that. So, because that's what I remember. You're right. The backgrounds, the tech there was decent, but they failed to build a good game with that. You had to put something there. I was thinking maybe there'd be a lot of characters because if the sprites are made up of little balls, then that's it. Then maybe they could have done something really interesting with the characters by having small sprites and making more characters. But I don't think they did that way. I just think literally the theme was spheres and they ran with it. And there's a few games that did that. And the other one I know is Vector Man over on the Genesis, where they took that hot ball tech and they made a character that was made of spheres. And I just can't get into it. It's just... I don't know. Like when you said bad fighters, it was balls or clay fighter, and that's what popped in my head. And you said balls. I'm like, yeah,
no,
I agree 100%.
Clay fighters was so much better than this. At least with clay fighters, you could look at them and kind of understand what the character was about.
Yes.
Like if I remember right, they had like a snowman and they had a couple different things like that. Yeah. This is just balls, just stacks of humanoid shaped balls. And for some reason they're fighting.
Both are bad fighting games, but at least Clay Fighter has interesting characters.
Right. Like with Clay Fighters, if I had never played that, I would at least look at the magazine and try to like read about the characters or their backstories. Balls are just a stack of balls, man. Just a stack of balls.
I remember this being popular in game magazine advertisements. I think they advertised the shit out of this game, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time.
Probably.
I rented it more than once.
Like one of those.
Don't know why.
Okay.
But we did.
But when we were recording your episode, and you had mentioned how pissed off you were about how bad the NES Superman was.
Yeah.
Because kids save up money and then they go to the store and they buy something. You think, oh, it's Superman. This is going to be great, and then it sucks. I want to say this because I said this during your episode. Superman was absolutely going to be on my NES,
right,
or my bottom 5 as well, but you took it and robbed me of that. So, and that's fine. I'm just glad somebody is out there so the world can hear about how bad it is. But I think about that too. Some kid saved up his money for Balls 3D.
You think?
And
though?
I don't know. I mean, because they advertised it, right? And part of what we were saying about Superman was, you go off the IP. Well, there's no IP for Balls.
Right.
There's just ads. If you're, reading Nintendo Power or, anything where there might be adverts for it, that wouldn't be a Nintendo Power, I suppose. Maybe it would if it was on the... I don't think there's a Nintendo platform. Well, no, I just got done saying it's the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm all worked up over Balls.
I just don't see... I'm just trying to picture if I was a kid during that era and I walked into a Target or whatever and I'm looking at a shelf of SNES games, because the Genesis, maybe I could see that a problem there, but the SNES had hundreds of good titles, a wall of amazing titles, right? And some kids I want that game. I want the game with the balls. It's got the Z, so it's extreme, it's edgy, it's cool. I saw the magazine ad. I saw those screenshots, and I said, "Balls, speak to me." I don't know, man. Maybe in a bargain bin somewhere at a Walmart, but I don't know, bro. Who bought this game? It must have sold something.
Right. Yeah. Ugh. I don't know. Yeah. A month ago, played it. Can't get the bad taste of balls out of my mouth. And you're right, though. That Z makes it edgy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's in 3D. Oof.
Yeah. How can you go wrong?
And I feel bad because Balls 3D is my number 3, but I probably should have put it as my number 2. Now that I'm looking at it, because number 2 sucks, but number 3 should have been my next one.
All right. Well, number 3 is Balls 3D.
Right.
And I 100% agree with you there. So let's hear your number 2 then, because it sounds like number 2 is really close.
It is. It's another fighting game. It's a game that when I saw adverts for it, I remember seeing these in Nintendo Power. I was like, okay, cool, and I got excited for it because some of the characters, looked interesting, and honestly, the design of the characters is about the coolest thing of all of it. So, without delaying any further, it's Shaq Fu.
Well, okay, you talk.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually a fan of Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
The dude does those. He's in every commercial. He was in this wonderful thing with Tony the Tiger that was so charming. He's in all those Gold Bond commercials. He was a phenomenal basketball player, which I loved watching basketball in the 90s and early 2000s.
Same.
So yeah, big Shaq fan. I loved his Shaq Diesel album. Like, I'm sorry. I don't even mind really admitting that. Like, I was a Shaq fan. Shaq Fu comes out. He looks mad as hell. He's got like these cool, like, I don't know. I was just excited for this game to come out. And then it comes out and it makes Street Fighter look like, a masterpiece. I'm not a huge Street Fighter fan, but Shaq Fu, why?
Well, so like, I've played it recently, and I remember playing as a kid and liking it, but I was bad at it. But I was bad at every fighting game. I'm a little bit better now, and when I tried playing it recently, you're right, it's not a good game. The controls are terrible, but it has a lot of like, look, the setting is neat. You're taking a basketball player, for fuck's sakes, and you're throwing it into this brand new creative world with all these weird characters. It's very unique, and the character designs are really great. But you're right, the combat sucks.
Yeah, and it is. And the characters, like, they had that mummy that was cool. Like I said, when I saw it in advertisements, and I remember commercials coming out for it, thinking, oh man, Shaq is doing everything. And it seems like, of course, he should be a fighting game character. The dude is giant and strong, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't be the fastest, but if he gets his hands on you, it's like game over. And then it just, it kind of suffered from the hype. And then it, kind of like Mortal Kombat mythology. It's like, oh man, this is a cool idea. And then they just phoned it in, and I think it was a cash grab.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more than a cash grab. I always got the impression that Shaquille O'Neal, yeah, he wants to make money. I mean, I think he was smart to realize that basketball money is not forever, which is good on him. But everything he's done, I think he tried to put some of himself in there, right? Like even something like Steel, which is a bad movie. I still like it because Shaquille O'Neal's in it, and something about it is decent. But between that or his music, like if he tries to put a brand with whatever he's doing to put a little bit of spin on it. So I don't know if it's a straight up cash grab. Like, what's that movie? Space Jam 2? That's a cash grab. I don't care. LeBron ain't doing nothing with that movie. That's just going to be a trash movie. I don't think there's any personality in what I've seen in that movie. But when I go look at what Shaq Fu did, the effort put into the character designs and the world there, I think is great. I just wish the game was actually good. But I think it's more than a cash grab. At least a little bit more.
Okay. Well, and having done a little bit of research, prior to tonight, apparently Shaq at that time was like king ego, and a lot of this was he just wanted his name and face on everything that he could to try to satiate that ego. Now, I don't know Shaq personally, I still see him as one of the heroes from my childhood. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm yeah. I remember just saying, but it worked for a kid. It worked, and I remember buying Shaq Fu, and this is the one where I think I was too proud to admit that it sucked. When you idolize somebody, so
Yeah.
they kind of walk on water. Like I played this, I'm like, oh man, that's great, man, that's great. No, I don't think I ever want to play it again. But that was a great game, you know.
Have you played it recently
And
at all or no?
no, well, a month ago when we were doing all the fighting games and stuff like that,
Okay.
that came up, and it's one of those things where there's a little bit of nostalgia for it, but that nostalgia is also a mixed drink with bitterness by how bad it was. So a lot of good, a lot of bad. No, just a lot of bad. A little bit of good, mostly all bad. Pretty much all bad.
Yeah.
But
I
there
just remember
was at one point a sequel scheduled.
Yeah. I just remember
And
the gameplay, like the combat was very punishing, felt very unfair. Like in some ways, it reminds me of Mortal Kombat 2 and how unfair the AI is in that. Shaq Fu reminds me a lot of that. I'm not saying MK2 is bad or anything. I mean, it's not my favorite, but the punishing AI, I think, is shared
It's
by
the
both
greatest
games.
Mortal Kombat.
We'll disagree there, but
That's
I
a
think
whole other episode, isn't it?
it totally is with Zero Lopez. But yeah, there's something where you have a game that maybe not the greatest game, but when you throw in like really punishingly hard AI, it does not elevate it. It does the opposite. It brings it even further down.
Well, and maybe it's because I got spoiled on Mortal Kombat, but I don't care for fighting games that don't have finisher moves. That's not a rule, but in general,
Well,
I
you're not gonna
love
like many fighting games, are you? 'Cause that's,
no, and that's
yeah.
that's actually kind of my biggest thing with like Street Fighter. Why are they not killing that guy? The fight's over. He won. Street Fighter, is a good game. I will always go Mortal Kombat. I like the over-the-top outlandish violence, but
Like
with
I've been
Shaq
playing.
Fu-
Sorry, one quick tangent. I've been playing the Guilty
Yeah, do
Gear
it.
series last week.
Okay.
It was on Humble Bundle for like $12, all the old games, because the new one came out as of this recording today. And so I was playing the older ones, and the last one had instant kill moves, and they're basically finishers. They're not gory or bloody, but they're totally fucking the shit of the opponent. And it's neat because you can do it whenever you want in the match. You give up your meter, your super meter, and you can execute it. And they're like flamboyant. They're in your face. They're anime to the nines. They're amazing. But the new game, Strive, doesn't have them. And it's like, it's not gameplay wise, they weren't that integral, right? You never really saw them used. But the fact they don't have the finishers, I'm kind of disappointed. So I'm kind of with you there. The MK finishers are a big thing for fighting games. I do like them. But yeah. Shaq Fu.
Shaq Fu. And quick mention for anybody who didn't know, a sequel titled Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn was actually released in June of 2018.
That was a Kickstarter, wasn't it?
I want to say yes, but it's very like cel-shaded animation, more like a comic book looking thing.
Okay.
But you can get it on like the Switch, PS4, the Xbox. I think one was what it was on, but yeah, I don't think it's a fighting game. I think it's like an actual beat 'em up.
Is it?
There's probably a story to it.
What's
Yeah.
the other one that there's a fan made? Is it Charles Barkley, Gaiden or something like that? It's like a fan game, and I think it's spoofing Shaq Fu. And I heard it was good, but it's more of an RPG.
shit,
I
okay.
think. I don't. I really should go look into it.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I kind of forgot about this, and really everything I just said about Shaq Fu comes from. I guess we'll call it my mind palace, but it's Google. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right. All right. So number
So-
2 is Shaq Fu.
Shaq Fu. Yeah. So I want to do the honorable mention before I talk about number 1. The honorable mention is one that is probably one of the more disappointing games I've ever played, next to my number 1 spot. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad game, other than, well, let me just talk about it. Metal Gear Solid 2. Sons of Liberty, I think is what it's called.
That's the PlayStation 2, right?
PlayStation 2, right. Okay. So Metal Gear Solid, fantastic game. Amazing operatic, amazing cutscenes, good music, great everything.
Right.
2 comes out, and it looks beautiful compared to what the PlayStation 1 version looked
Oh
like.
yeah, seriously.
And all the adverts I seen, all the commercials, I was excited to play as Snake, as I think everybody was. Snake, Solid Snake is such an amazing protagonist, and he was so much fun in the NES games, and then of course now with Metal Gear Solid. So 2 comes out, and it starts off fucking baller. You're on this boat. Everything looks smooth. The gameplay is smooth. The sounds are dope. You can grab a character, and it looks like you're grabbing a character. It doesn't look like you've grabbed them, and then there's 2 inches of space between you and them, and then you know what I mean. Like everything was just great. And then you finish this tanker episode, and then you start a second part where you're not Snake, you're some other guy or gal, and
It's Raiden,
ends
right?
up being Raiden. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, that was when I found out it's pronounced Raiden and not Raiden. Fuck me. That's
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I didn't, So I kept on going with the game because it looked beautiful, and maybe I'll get to be Snake again. And it just never happens. You never get a chance to be Snake. And then it all ends up being, spoiler alerts, but it's been fucking 20 years. What the fuck? Anyway, it ends up being like a training exercise or some shit. And I don't know. To me, it was a beautiful game and very well put together. But what a fucking middle finger it was for them to be like, everybody loves Snake. Let's just have him a side character, and now you get to play as this other guy that no one cares about.
I remember I never had a PS2, but I was always on the fence of maybe saving my money up for one. I ended up getting the Dreamcast instead, so I lost that one. Right?
Fucking whoops.
Yeah, whoops. But so the game media lead up for Metal Gear Solid 2, like I love the PlayStation 1. That's like an amazing PS game. Like I'm not a big fan of the PlayStation, but MGS is fucking amazing, and it's a system
Hell
seller.
yeah.
So like the games media were doing screenshots and doing previews of MGS2, things like describing how Snake shoots a bucket of ice and the ice cubes are individually crafted and they fly from the bucket, shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They hyped it up so much, and the graphics and the gameplay being so great, and then when it finally came out, you could tell they had embargoes or they had NDAs or whatever you call it, and they weren't trying to spoil the reveal, but it still got out a month later. And when they started explaining that, yeah, you don't really play Snake through most of this game, I've never been more disinterested in a game ever. I think at that point, like I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I don't need a PS2. Dreamcast is pretty good. I don't need this. I don't get the design decision, but I mean that's Kojima, right? Nobody can explain Kojima. He's got that otherworldly creative mind, and I just don't know what's in his head. But
He is the Thelonious Monk of video game development.
yeah.
That's probably the most like artsy thing I will ever say.
Are you keeping up
yeah.
with the E3 stuff at all, or no?
No,
So
I'm not.
So Kojima left Konami a couple of years back, and it was in the news. Anyway, he has his own studio, and he made this game called Death Stranding, which is not a Metal Gear game. But
No, I watched Wolf play that.
yeah,
played that
yeah, exactly,
That was
right.
fun.
It's hilarious, but not my kind of game. Anyway,
Yeah.
so E3, the Summer Games Fest, which we'll get separate from E3. Anyway, it's Summer Games Festival. They were showing trailers of various things. There's a short interview with Kojima, and he's like, "Oh, one more thing," and it goes to a trailer, and it's it's Norman Reedus from Death Stranding, and he's like in this warehouse that looks oddly like the is it Shadow Moses Island, like the warehouse area, and he's sneaking through the warehouse, and it comes across a cardboard box, and you're like, "Oh shit." Is he teasing, like, is he going to do another Metal Gear game? Is it going to be like a Metal Gear inspired Death Stranding DLC? Then all of a sudden he knocks the box over, and a bunch of oranges just roll onto the floor. And then it's like he hops in the box, hops out, smiles, and it cuts to a thing that says Death Stranding Director's Cut coming out later this year on PS5. So it's a total fuck you to the Metal Gear Solid fans, because he can't do anything with that series anyway. He doesn't even work with Konami. But it brought back some memories of like he could have done some really cool shit with Metal Gear back in the day, and I don't know. For me, it kind of ended with the first game. So I hear you on number 2.
Well, but 3 was great.
Well, Was it?
Because
Okay.
then they went back and redid. So they put Metal Gear Solid. They called it the Twin Snakes, and they put it on the GameCube, which is fantastic.
Well, they animated that up. If you remember the cutscenes from the GameCube version, it's different.
Yeah, and I kind of don't mind it. Like for me, the graphical updates and the smoothness and the detail was worth it. I don't mind them fucking with the cutscenes. You know, I get it. If George Lucas can get away with constantly retooling the original trilogy to make it prettier, whatever. I guess I should say that with the George Lucas comment, that prepared me for shit like this.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
George Lucas.
right, Twin Snakes, fantastic. That is a great version of Metal Gear Solid. MGS2, they retitled Subsistence, and then MGS3, which was originally called Snake Eater, was Substance. Or no, 2 was Substance, 3 was Subsistence, and there were like new VR missions, there were new sections, and it was kind of like a director's cut or an updated version. Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid 3, is a fantastic game and probably my favorite of the entire series. 2 was just kind of this weird, bizarre outlier that they took away Snake, from being playable after the first 15 minutes or however long it takes you to beat the tanker. And then the rest of it seems incredibly inconsequential. Like, that's the other thing about that game is, for as fun as the playability was, because it's Metal Gear Solid, you've got the sneaking, you've got the espionage, all that stuff. The entire thing just seemed very inconsequential because at the end it's like a training exercise or something that kind of his own mind had come up with. I'm still kind of iffy on the details because that's what Metal Gear Solid should do anyways. But
Right.
yeah, I like the game enough. I don't want it to be on the bottom 5, but I bought the PlayStation 2 for this, and
Right.
so that's like that slap in the face we've talked about earlier. When you're hyped, you spend money on it. You're a kid, you don't have access to a lot of money, and then you get stuck with this. So I tried to enjoy it for how beautiful it looked and the playability of it, but really between taking away Snake, replacing him with Raiden, and then the payoff at the end of the game falling flat, I just was not for me.
I do want to say, Raiden gets some redemption as being a cool character later on.
Mm-hmm.
There is a game called Metal Gear Revengeance, which is probably one of the dumbest titles I've ever seen a video game slap on the label. But Revengeance, it's not a Kojima game. I can't remember the name of the company that makes it, but it's a spin-off, and it's action heavy, like insane, batshit crazy katana combat. Raiden's like mostly cyborg now, and there's a cool cutting mechanic where you can freely cut through an enemy in slow-mo, and it looks amazing. It's in your face. It's totally anime. If I remember right, I want to say the last boss has you fighting the president on top of a mech. I could be wrong though. I did watch a playthrough of it. Metal Gear Revengeance is an interesting title, and it brings some cool to the character that maybe they should have brought back or they should have had in the original second game. So not a total wash of a character, at least later on.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. And there was another title I remember seeing the artwork for it. Maybe it's Resurgence, but it was on like the PS3. Is that right? It's around the time Guns of the Patriots came out.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's good. I'm glad it got some redemption. It was never for me. Yeah. And then the big boss at the end was Solidus Snake. I'm like, no. We need gas or plasma. We got solid, we got liquid. Give me a plasma Snake. That sounds dope. How about Solidus? And we'll give him 2 Doc Ock arms. That sucks.
Yeah, it gets weird. Again, Kojima lore. It's
but
it's bizarre.
Nobody else thinks like him, so it's a romp. It's you never know what's going to happen, and for that I can appreciate it. But so that's my honorable mention, which I spoke way too passionately about.
No, that's fair. That's an interesting one. All right, number 1 and GP. Go ahead.
No. The reason I wanted to put the honorable mention before number 1 is because 1 sucks so bad. There's not much we're going to be able to say that's going to be entertaining about it.
Oh, smart. Okay. So number 1 bottom game for GP's bottom 5. What is it?
7-Up for the NES. Now, before everybody freaks out,
which one?
Yes, for the NES. The cool spot 7-Up is that's a badass game. That's for like the Super Nintendo where you are the hip little 7-Up spot, walking around on these very cool kind of like beach and sandy. I don't know. That's a cool like platformer. Cool Spot 7 Up for the Super Nintendo. This is 7 Up for the NES. And it looks like Connect 4 or like Othello, but with colors. Yes, and it's a board game. It's a puzzle board game. You versus a computer. And for whatever reason, 7 Up decided this is what we need to represent our fucking company. It's horrible. No. So basically, if you don't know how the game is, you're on like, it looks like a Connect 4 grid. You know, there's just spots for all these spots, circular dots, and you can play up to 4 players, and there's 4 different colors, red, blue, yellow, and green, and you get 1 dot that represents your color on the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. 1 color for each corner. And then you can pick 1 spot to move your character to, thus doubling your spots from 1 to 2 if it's an adjacent or adjacent spot. So then as you approach the spaces occupied by the other colored spots, if you're placing a spot next to them, their color spots become your color spots. So you are trying to take over their slots with your color while setting it up to not let others encroach on your territory and absorb your colors. The winner who takes over the entire board, once you're at 0 spots because they've been taken over, you're out. And that's the entire thing. How it represents 7 Up, I don't really know, other than just this, whenever you move your spot into a next spot, good God, I'm going to yawn because I'm already tired talking about this game. There's a little animation of the Cool Spot from 7 Up that does a funny little thing.
He pole vaults,
he pole vaults, or he does like this stereotypical like walk like an Egyptian thing, or some funny little 2-second animation.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of, do you remember in like Windows 95, there's the paperclip guy whenever you're in a Word document, who would like
Clippy
show up.
Everybody's favorite mascot. Yeah.
Pretty sure whoever animated and designed him did the exact same shit. And the thing is, if this game could be played a little bit quicker, that'd be great. But no, every single time you or the computer makes a move, this little spot shows up and does some stupid little shit for 2 to 5 seconds. And it's just, you can adjust the settings so you can have infinite time to make your next move, or like, I think 5 seconds is the fastest that you can do. And it's just, yeah.
Cool Spot.
Cool Spot 7 Up. Well, I don't even think it's Cool. It might be Cool Spot, but Cool Spot was the one for the Super Nintendo, and maybe part of the reason I hate the one for the NES is because I remember thinking that I had played or watched my brother play the Cool Spot one for the Super Nintendo as a kid.
Right.
Growing up, I'm expanding my NES collection, and I find it at a store a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh, fucking rad! I love this game. I buy it. I'm like, why is this game only $3? And then I take it home, put it in the NES, and I realize, oh,
all right,
this game sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you thought it was a different game. That's why.
Yeah, I thought maybe this was like an 8-bit version, like maybe an original version that they then reported for the Super Nintendo later on. No. And it just sucks. So let's say you win. Let's say you knock out all 3 of the other 3 colors. Basically, the victory, the ending, screen, you're in like a stadium, and there's people in the stadium seats, but they're too small graphically to make out what they are or who they are.
Right.
And then they're doing like the wave. And then I think there's a screen that says like, you win. And that's it. And it's not even, you win. It's just, you win. It's like, fucking great. Handshake. And that's the game.
So,
and
okay.
I hate it.
All right. So this game, I rented it as a kid, actually.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, I couldn't afford it. But if I could, I probably would have bought it. This is a game where I'm not saying it's top 15 or anything. But if I were to make a top 50 list of favorite Nintendo games, this would probably be in that top 50.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a good game. I actually like it, but it's that weird, quirky charm. It's the same vibe I get with Snoopy Silly Sports, which is another game I actually quite like. And I'm not going to say it's a great game. There's some in that game that are terrible. Like it's clunky. And Cool Spot has the same vibe though, where it's like, I'm not sure why the theme has been slapped on this game. I kept there's a name for this game, Virus or something. I don't know. There's been other games like it where it's like the Othello style of moving your pieces in a board game. I like that gameplay. There's an arcade game actually that I used to play as a kid, at an arcade this mall I went to, and they had it there. It was a sit-down cabinet, and it's the same game. It was an alien theme instead of Cool Spot. So when I rented it, and I also saw the character in the box, thinking it was something completely different, and then when I actually brought it home and plunk it in, and it's a board game, I actually quite like it. I thought the graphics where the guy moves, I thought that was cool as hell when he does the pole vaulting thing or he flips around. I thought it was cute. I like board games. This one's a pretty good one. You're right, the ending sucks. There's like zero fanfare for that. But when I look at the Cool Spot, the other one, I think that was on Genesis, if I'm not wrong, as well. I used to see that in
Super Nintendo
screenshots.
and Genesis, yeah.
And when I actually got a chance to play it, I just thought it was another generic mascot platformer. And I had nothing for it. I didn't like it at all. So I actually like NES Cool Spot or whatever it's called. But I think it's good. I think maybe top 50 list, it'd be there. But I could totally see if you're a kid and you thought you were getting the cool, interesting mascot platformer and you got this instead, I'd probably be upset too.
Right. Yeah. So you and I are on exactly opposite ends of this. You don't care for the fun, interesting platformer game. You like this piece of shit. Whereas I am like, the cool looking thing rocks, but this piece of shit sucks. So I will say this. I feel like maybe, I think maybe part of my disdain for this game was the hype for thinking I knew what I was getting and then figuring out not only it wasn't that, but also what the fuck is this and why is it 7-Up? I think if I were to play against other people, that would have some maybe enjoyability to it. I don't think that the computers, I've never played it enough to be like, oh man, the computer got me good. But, maybe. But also, I don't need the 7-Up branding on here. And I hear what you're saying about the quirky little movements for the little 7-Up spot. And I get that, but maybe not after every fucking move. Maybe just do it when you're overtaking other people. Like if you do something good. Otherwise, it's a participation trophy that completely is devoid of meaning. And if he's only got 6 or 7 things that he can do, it becomes repetitive, redundant, and boring. And I can't say anything solidly redeeming about this game. Gameplay is confusing and sucks, especially if you're a kid. As an adult, what's the point? I mean, I understand it's a puzzle game or whatever. Maybe I would like it if I'm going against other people. But yeah, the ending sucks. There's really no sort of replayability or value to playing it. I just, to me, it's that bad. I don't want to shit on one of your top 50 games or top 5 games. I know you love this one, but
No, it's your list, man. You dump all over. That's the point. But if I remember right, I don't even think there's music in this one, actually. It's at the title screen.
I don't know. But to that point, when you said that you played an arcade version of this and it was a sit-down cabinet, that should tell you you're sitting down because nobody will stand there and play this shit without falling asleep. You need to be in a comfortable position because you might doze off.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a board game in an arcade. How few of those are there, right? Like usually that's something you see in a bar or something. But yeah, it was a sit-down cabinet, and it was the same idea, but much better looking for an obviously arcade game versus NES and different theme. But I like board games, and board games on a console like NES was a bit of a novelty. Like thinking back on it, I used to like the Monopoly on NES. I liked that a lot.
Anticipation was great.
Yeah.
Classic Concentration was great.
Yeah.
There were so many good board game adaptations. I will give you that 100%. But
cool
to me,
spots
this one,
right there. Yeah.
But no, I feel like, and again, part of it as well, along with all these other things, is the giant question mark of why is 7-Up doing this? Like, the Cool Spot, man, they made a hip, awesome little character that kids would love to play with. Here, they just made this obnoxious. Give me the paperclip guy from Windows 95. I would have enjoyed that.
You know what it is? Like you said before,
it's a weird
cash
choice.
grab, right? So that's what it is.
Yeah. But I mean, talk about a glow up to go from this game to the Cool Spot, Super Nintendo and Genesis one. Hell yeah.
I don't know. Well, they definitely put money and thought into the other one for sure. Like, you know what this is? This is a game that was probably created by a studio, and they were shopping around, and that happened a lot back then. There was there's a movie that came out, something about a dinosaur story or something like that. And
I remember that one.
There was a game, I can't remember if it was the Game Boy version or the NES version. It might one of the two. And there's the dinosaur story on that console. The engine itself, the game itself, was rethemed like 4 times with different characters and sold separately. Is one of those games, right, where they couldn't get a solid supply publisher, so they shopped it around to studios and they got some like comic book deal or a movie deal, and they rethemed all the sprites, but it's exactly the same game, and it got sold like 3 or 4 times in different countries and regions. So I imagine this was like that, where it's just like the studio had made it already, proof of concept, shopped it around. Coca-Cola was, busy. They were dealing with the bear at the time. And then, like, 7-Up is like, yeah, cool spot. We need a game right now. Got to cash in on this Nintendo thing. That's all it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the game you're talking about is called We're Back.
Yes. A dinosaur story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
all right.
Yeah. And that's something I talk about a lot with specifically board games is which came first? Did they say we want to make a game for this IP, or did they have the proof of concept, like you said, and then said, who wants to throw their money in, and we'll adapt it to you guys. So, and yeah, it's such a letdown, such a stinker.
Well, sometimes it works out. Like, do you like Small World? You ever played Small World?
I don't think I've played Small World.
It's a great board game, and like a really great board game. One of my favorite ones, actually. It's like a territory control game, but it's very tactical. But anyway,
cool.
World of Warcraft has a version of it. It's World of Warcraft Small World edition, and like I'm on the fence about buying it because I love the series very much, and I don't mind Warcraft characters and stuff. But just like, is this a cash grab? Is this somebody slapping their name on an existing thing I would like? It's probably so. It's also like $10 more.
Right. Is it Tiny Epic Kingdom like that? Have you guys ever played Tiny Epic Kingdom?
A long time ago, I think. It's like a modular board, so the game's a little bit different every time, but you have different races and different powers, and they're shuffled together, so you have a different pair. So you could have like flying gnomes or stealthy elves or something like that. And you only have a limited amount of time with your race to put tokens on the board and fight before they die out and you get a new race. It's a really great game. It's actually a digital version of it on Android, on Windows. Actually, I think it's on Steam. If it goes on sale, it's worth playing. Small World's a great board game.
Now, let me go and just kind of point out here, 7-Up or Cool Spot for the NES is such a bad game that we had to transition to talking about a cool game.
No, look, man. I'm not saying it's top 10, but top 30.
No, like I hear you. A few minutes ago it was top 50 and top 30 is great, and and everybody out there listening, everybody's heard you say it's in your top 10, and then if you're following us, in Discord. Shout out to Sick Jake and let him know that we see your top 5 and this is on there, and probably even your top 3, and that's great.
I can't be the only one who likes this
being your favorite game.
Fuck you.
I think
can't.
You might be.
Hold on. I'm checking my Mind Palace for reviews of this fucking game.
Okay.
We need to know.
Yeah.
I can't be the only one who likes this game. I can't. That's a platform game. That's no good. Hold on.
Here's what we're gonna do. When I come back to streaming, which will be happening by the end of this month of June. We're moving. I've been away from streaming because we had to sell the house and I had to take down my studio, all that stuff. I will do a fundraiser, and if we raise over a certain amount of money, and this is going to be for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, I will spend a day speed running 7-Up for the NES.
So you know what? So it's
How's
just
that?
we have to get this. That sounds like a plan. Actually, I've totally pitched money for that. But it's called Spot the Video Game.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was later followed up with platformers Cool Spot and Spot Goes to Hollywood, which nobody ever hears about that last one. And is there reviews?
So here's the thing. They called it that because 7-Up wanted to pull out their name at the last second because it sucked. And they called it Spot the Video Game because nobody could spot the video game. They just identified it as a giant heaping pile of trash.
Oh, ouch. I'm trying to find reviews. Usually when you go to Wikipedia, there's like a review for it. Mm-hmm. But no, there's no reviews for it. What a shame of history that nobody really did it.
I don't know if you contribute to Wikipedia or not, but you should go ahead and write a review, and then maybe some of the people out in Discord land and on Twitter who listen can ratify that for you.
It's great.
You can put up a glowing review.
You know what's great? For a limited time, a mail-in promotion was offered to purchase the NES version for $24.99, along with 4 labels from specially marked 7-Up bottles. So if you bought multiple bottles of 7-Up and collected the tops, you got the privilege of giving 7-Up more money to buy this game.
which is fucked up, right? Like if you spent $4 on our sodas, you can just spend $70 or $24 more dollars, and we'll give you the game. And then if you go to the store, it's like $21.
Do you have a few minutes? I got to tell you about
Let's
this
do it.
game.
Tell me about it.
All right. In a retrospective interview, the NES version of Spot was created over 6 weeks with no development hardware or software. The game was based on Infection, which was initially intended to be a budget release. And then when the 7-Up branding was added, Spot was sold as a full-price title. So it was going to be a budget title until it got the branding. And Infection, while never seeing a commercial release, was released by the developer Gary Doon into public domain in 1994. So you too can legally play Infection and just pretend that there's a cool spot all over that damn thing. That's awesome. So it was an old game that was shopped around.
Yeah, and I believe it. And how funny that they could be like, did you see the movie Creed, which is like a spinoff from the Rocky Balboa franchise?
The first one, yes, I did.
Yeah, he's fighting under his mother's last name of Johnson,
Yeah.
and he's a fighter. And then they're like, oh, his name is Creed. Let's give him a title shot. That's what happened with Spot. The difference is Creed was fantastic, and Michael B. Jordan should be elected to every political position in the world because he's fantastic, except for King of Wakanda.
Yeah, well, no, nobody ever, never. Oh my God! All right, I'm done. It's not
Michael
a bad
B. Jordan.
game.
Michael B. Jordan, if you're listening, I hope
notable listener, press B. Michael B. Jordan. It's in the name.
We can't verify that, but
well, who's gonna fact check us?
Oh yeah. So the B in Michael B. Jordan stands for Michael Press B to cancel Jordan.
We got to reach out for that sponsor opportunity.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right.
Yeah, I'd love to be in Creed 3. Not as anybody important, just like in the background.
Just a side character. We're not asking for much.
No, maybe a speaking role, like a walk-on thing. Maybe no, I don't know.
That's
it
wild.
doesn't matter.
All right.
Anyway, thank you very much for listening to my bottom 5: Final Fantasy II, Mortal Kombat Mythology, Sub-Zero, Balls 3D, Shaq Fu, 7-Up or Spot, the video game, and Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah. Hey. Like I said, there's a lot of mix and match there, but that's okay. I should just say really quick, make sure you check us out on PressBToCancel.com, bookmark it. Also, you can check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, I think. If there's somewhere that you listen to podcasts and you don't see Press B to Cancel, please message me on Twitter. I want to spam that damn thing everywhere I can. You can also check us out on Patreon. All money we raise through Patreon goes through hosting costs and advertising because, podcasting ain't easy. You can also check us out on Discord or our merch. I don't have the links because I'm suck at this after 10 weeks of having these. But if you go to PressBToCancel.com, there's like a support tab that has all these links. Or check us out on Twitter.
I love it.
Yeah.
Jake, thank you very much for joining me today with this. Thank you for letting. I feel like I vented. I feel like I've gone on this venting rant. Like I feel therapized.
Well, that's good because you haven't been streaming, so you need some therapy.
I do, and we will be back to it, like I said, here in the next couple of weeks after I get moved into the new house and settled in.
Awesome.
So why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, Jake?
Yeah, I'm Sick Jake. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter. I don't stream as often on Twitch. I'm trying to do it at least once every 2 weeks, and I've also been doing the BizHawk Blender or BizHawk Shuffler with games submitted by chat. It's been fun to do, so you'll see me there once in a while. Otherwise, I'm shit posting on Twitter. What else am I going to do?
That's true. I love it. And then, of course, I'm Guy Prime for The Retro Therapy, and starting soon, you can find me again on twitch.tv/TheRetroTherapy, on Discord with Press B to Cancel, or, of course, the podcast. And, yeah. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let us know in Discord what you think of our lists. It's always so much fun to compile lists and discuss them with the other guys in the podcast, but we always love hearing from the guys and gals in Discord land. So let us know.
Awesome.
All right. Till next time, everybody, give it your B game.
Special thanks to Arthur the Ancient on SoundCloud for our podcast theme. Listen to more episodes on our website, PressBToCancel.com. As well, feel free to like or subscribe at Apple and Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, or anywhere else you like to listen to your favorite shows. Thank you to our supporters on patreon.com/pressb to cancel. Your money helps keep this ball rolling. And as always, thank you to all our listeners. This has been
Press B to cancel.
All right, everybody, I've got Sick Jake here with me. How you doing today, Sick Jake?
Can't complain.
Okay, so you have no idea why I've asked you into Audacity, and today is today is Wednesday, the 16th of June, following the Friday after we had recorded my Bottom 5 episode, right?
Right, yeah, I didn't know you want to date this, but yeah, it's been a few days after the fact.
Well, it's important. As I've moved into a new home and I've set up my streaming gear and all this stuff, I took some time to try to play 7-Up, Spot the video game. Okay? And it's no longer in my bottom 5. I think you're right. It's not in my top anything, but for what it is, it doesn't deserve quite the punishment that I gave it. Yeah. That said, there is, to my shame, a video game that should have been on there, my top 5, at the number 1 spot, that I forgot about, and then I remembered it the moment I pulled it out of storage.
Right.
And that's Ghostbusters, the video game.
Oh.
Now,
okay.
Yeah, before everybody gets triggered, there are no bigger fans of the Ghostbuster franchise than myself and my wife.
Right.
It's one of the first things we bonded over when we started courting, I guess, or courtship. But Ghostbusters, the video game, is a piece of shit, and I will die on that hill. I don't know what to do, and there's only 4 beats, like 1 bar of music that just is on loop, and I can't do it. The only way to even try to play that game is with different music playing in the background or the TV on mute. And even then, it's still a turd. And there's no redeeming thing to this game. I was wrong, and I am correcting that.
Okay, well, first off, so not your bottom 5. The spot this is the board game one that it's not in my top 5, but it's definitely not my bottom 5. I think I pegged it as top 50 or top 100 or something.
Yeah, I think originally you said top 40, and then it got whittled into like the top 30 or something.
Right. Okay. So what changed your mind when you played it again?
I don't know. I think trying to give it a fair shake. When I put together my list, I was drawing upon memories of things that I could remember because all of my video games have been in storage.
Right.
So I went to the classics that I knew I hated, and that was on there. And then to hear you, talk about how it's one of the best 25 games of all time really made me think maybe I need to play it with like my sensibilities now. If you hate carrots when you're a kid and then you try carrots when you're an adult, there's a chance you're going to like them.
Right.
And
totally.
that's kind of what I did now that I understand better what to do and how to play it. It still has its weaknesses. Again, it's not in my top 20 like it is yours, but I shit on it too hard. And while I can't take that shit back, I can certainly dust it off and transfer that pile of shit onto Ghostbusters.
Well, I'm certainly glad that we will not receive those cease and desist orders from the Cool Spot people as we trash on their 30-year-old game.
Well, and that's the thing. If we're going to get cease and desist or if we're going to get any flack about crapping on Ghostbusters, the video game, I would rather that letter come from Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray than whoever the fuck is running 7-Up.
So I do want to comment on Ghostbusters too, because
sure,
that's an interesting game because it's ported to a lot of different systems. I can't remember what the original was. I want to say it was an Amiga game, but I'm sure I'm wrong on that. But I first played it on the Atari 2600. So, I mean, and it has the same loop, coincidentally enough, as every other version of that game. It's terrible. Yeah. It's a very confusing game. I played a little bit on the NES, and again, like you, I didn't know what the hell to do with it. And I think what makes it bad in my eyes is the ending sequence. I don't know if you ever got that far.
Congratulation?
No, I didn't get that far. So after you catch ghosts, whatever, and you get to the tower, you have to walk up steps in an office building, I guess, from like the movie or that condo building. and you're literally walking up the steps. You have to tap the buttons as you make your way up the steps, and you have to avoid the ghosts. And if you hit the ghosts, I think they freeze you, I think. And it's such a long manual sequence as you go up steps, and it's so terrible.
Yeah, this is one of the best poorly translated. Like, this is up there with All Your Base Are Belong to Us.
Right.
The ending title, I've got it pulled up now, says Congratulation space 3 exclamation marks. You have completed a great game, period, and proved the justice of our culture. Now go and rest our heroes.
See, I didn't even think it was a Japanese game. I thought it was an English title.
I have no idea. Maybe it's not a translation issue. Maybe it's just shitty ass writing. But
You know, it could be that. There was one thing to mention about these guys. Well, I'm checking my Mind Palace here real quick.
Sure. While you're doing that, I will say that I won't be playing the spot game anytime soon. But you and I had talked about, you know, I'll do a fundraiser, and if we don't get a certain goal, I will, or if we do get a certain goal, I will spend a day playing all of my bottom 5 games. And that's really what kind of put me over when I decided to pop it in and try it again, was like, I could play this and actually not necessarily enjoy it, but get through it and be like, okay, it's done. I think if people want to watch somebody play a game they despise, I mean, Ghostbusters is going to be that thing. I might have to mute the audio track because I don't think anybody will want to sit through however long it takes to beat that game. But
It's
just listening to that loop. But
Yeah. It's certainly up there with the most obnoxious freaking soundtrack. It's not even a soundtrack, you're right. It's just a single loop. The only game that's worse, I think, for music is 1942 on the NES.
That is fair.
Yeah, which is
good.
just, I can't play that game unless it's on mute. It's crazy. I was trying to find. There's a video I watched about Ghostbusters and the password system, but you know, I have to go look it up. Maybe it's something I can put in the show notes. But there is some interesting stuff behind the scenes and how that game was created, and whatnot. But yeah, you're right. Ghostbusters, trash game that I played on the Atari 2600. So that means I actually owned it on the Atari, and I later played the NES version. It's no better. In fact, it's probably worse considering the power of that system, and it's something else. So, but thank you, the Cool Spot community. Thanks you for acknowledging their game is not hot garbage.
No, and again, it's not going to be that top 15 title, but I will take it off the bottom and leave you and your top 10 games of all time to be in peace.
Yeah, you know, eventually it'll make its way to my game of the year next year.
I like that. Well, I'm sorry I kept you in the dark about why I needed to do something with you today. I hope you didn't lose any sleep over that, but I had to eat some crow, as they say.
Fair enough. All right. There you go. All right, stopping. 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 All right.